It's time for November's lookbook, and if you watched November's plans video, you know I had grand plans to get lots of things done, and I've managed to get a few of them done. There's still a few outstanding. There's a few that I'm not going to be showing you today because they're coming out in December, but I did get 4 things completely finished and I really like all of them, which is absolutely awesome. Now 2 of them I didn't even mention in my plans video because they'd already been cut out and been talked about months back, and I just decided a couple of days, those are quick projects, let's get those done before we start working on anything else. So the first thing that I finished in November is the dress that I'm currently wearing, which is the Vogue 9182, and I have to say I'm absolutely in love with this thing. The Patreon peeps had voted for the fabric choice for this dress quite a few years ago now. I don't know why I just never got around to making this dress up, because it's absolutely beautiful. It's really nicely fitted in the bodice. I have raised the back neckline up to be a lot higher. The original dress does come just above where my bra strap would be, so it's actually kind of a similar level to this front scoop of the bodice. It is actually kind of a scoop neckline. I've got it on with the shirt today because it is chilly, and I actually do think that this is a really nice way of wearing this dress as well. So much so that I will be using this pattern for my pinafore dress from my capsule collection, and if you want to learn more about the beginnings of that, there's a video up here and I'll link that in the description down below. The skirt on this is absolutely epic. There are very decent sized pockets. Usually pockets on these kinds of dress patterns tend to be a little on the skimpy side. These are nicely sized pockets. They will take my iPhone XS Max. It's the bigger one, but it's a fairly old phone now, but it does fit in this pocket without it falling out. The fabric is a viscose linen blend that I got from the textile centre 7 years ago, if not more. I absolutely love it. There's a little bit left over that I'm hoping I'm going to be able to make some kind of a shirt out of, although it does have that kind of more linen-y texture than smooth viscose. I'm currently wearing the Vogue 9345 that I've turned into a shirt with the express purpose of wearing it under dresses like this, and it feels really nice against the skin. It's nice and soft. The viscose linen does have a little bit of the kind of like roughness to it. It's not scratchy, but I have lined the bodice of this dress with the Lotus lining from Lady McCalls, which again I will link down in the description down below. I love this thing. I think it's absolutely glorious. The skirt is a really lovely length. It's very long, which I think is going to work really well as a layering piece. I did actually try this dress on over the dress version I have of this, and you couldn't see the skirt at all, which is another reason that I'm using it for my capsule collection outer pinafore piece, because it will be able to be layered over a multitude of my dresses, which is awesome. As I say, there is a sew along due for this one, and it's been another one of those ones that has been outstanding for so long that it was just building up into this thing that I was just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I thought, you know what, let's get this one done, because I had never made the dress before, so I wasn't sure that I was going to love it this much. I also wanted to change the back neckline, which was something I've never tried before. I have seen and got the idea from Emily Hallman, whose blog no longer exists, which is really sad, but she does still have an Instagram account, so I will link to that in the description down below. I love her style. I also love her way of sewing in collections. It's highly influenced me and is something that I want to kind of do more of, more successfully next year. Hopefully I will achieve that. Stay tuned to see those videos coming soon. It was her idea to raise up the back neckline. I believe she did that because she had a scar that she wanted to hide on her upper back, but for me it was so that this dress would be more flexible as a layering piece. I found that a low back, especially with a shirt like this that isn't like super fitted, like a t-shirt for example, tends to blouse out over the back, and I don't like how that looks. So raising the back neckline up was for me a way of making this into a more flexible pinafore dress. I also kind of think that I might lose the straps on this if it had the low scoop back as well. I've never made it like that, so I can't say for sure, but for me, having the higher back works on multiple levels. There are a few things I want to change about the construction. I'm happy with how this one has come out. I've only lined the bodice for this one. I haven't lined the skirt, and I don't feel that that's necessary. I have a slip on, and I tend to wear slips under my clothes so that my clothes don't stick to my tights, and that's usually my main concern of this kind of fabric at this time of year, is that I will be wearing tights, so I don't want things to cling to it. So the reason for me just making this one up and not putting out sew along is I'd never made it before and I wanted to test out raising up the back neckline and also the construction method. I really like the construction method for the bodice of this. I put the skirt, I mean, honestly, I didn't actually look in the instructions, and I put the skirt on how I think the skirt should go on, and I don't overly love the finish because it's meant that the waist seam has had to be folded down, so I've had to finish that with bias binding, and it's left a couple of raw pieces in there of the kind of princess seams. It's not the end of the world. I have fray checked them. It's not going to come to pieces. I'm not worried about this particular dress, but for the next one, I would like to change up the way that the skirt and the facing gets attached to the bodice. I'm also going to fully line the next one because I am making it out of a cream rayon cotton suiting, which is semi-sheer, and as I want to be wearing it as a layering piece, that's something else I want to think about. I am going to need to make sure that I am making it as opaque as possible so that you can't see the outline of the things that I have on underneath. That is a consideration, something I do need to think about. And so yes, there will be a sew along coming for this dress. It's going to be fairly soon because that dress is due at the end of February, so there will be a sew along coming for this early on in the new year. Love this pattern, highly recommend this pattern. It's a very simple sew as well, which is absolutely lovely. The next piece that I finished was my lace nude illusion dress, and I love how this has turned out. This lace has been living rent-free in my stash and my head for a very long time. I think I've had it for about 8 or 9 years, possibly longer. Mum bought it back for me from one of her many travels around the world. She bought me back 3 different laces, this one, a navy one and a black one. The navy and the black are very heavily beaded, so I decided to start the lace dress project with this turquoise one, which only had the motifs on it and some shimmer and glimmer in the actual weaving of the fabric itself. I am over the moon with how this came out, and I have done an entire video about how I put it together, how I finished off the neckline so that I had the scallops around the neckline, around the cap sleeves, and also the hem. Yeah, basically the kind of like sewing process I went through to get to this finished result. I haven't worn it yet, but I do have a couple of events coming up in December that I'm going to need a fancy schmancy dress for, so I'm going to probably wear this one, which I'm very much looking forward to. I love how this has turned out. I really like the skin coloured satin underneath of the lace. I think it does kind of play on that nude illusion look. I did have some qualms about the sparseness of the motifs on the midriff with the top being so dense, and then because of the pleats, the bottom or the top of the skirt being as dense as it was, I did play with the idea of having a belt made or perhaps appliquing more motifs onto that area. I still like the idea of a belt, but it has to be the perfect belt. One of those skinny metal ones I think actually would look really nice, but I've had one in the past and it wasn't the best, so I need to go on the hunt for one that will actually work for me. It definitely needs to be gold or rose gold. I'm really pleased with this. I have been terrified of this lace and doing the wrong thing with this lace for years now, which is why it was on my list of projects that scared me that I put up at the beginning of the year. I'm glad that I waited because I do think I have got to the point where I've done it justice, but I'm really glad that I plucked up the courage to actually give it a try because I do think I've done it justice. It's a combination of 3 patterns: the Licala 4451 sleeves or sleeve caps, which I love and smoosh onto everything, as you will see in a second, the Butterick 6380 bodice, and then the Butterick 5951 for the underskirt, and then the overlayer is just 2 rectangles of fabric French seamed together and gathered in at the top, and I love how it's turned out. So really pleased with this one. The next piece that I made was my 5951 with the Licala 4451 cap sleeves on it again, from this absolutely beautiful pansy print cotton lawn that I got from Truro Fabrics years ago. I saw it on their website and ordered a sample, and then didn't order any in time and went back and they'd sold out, and I was absolutely gutted. And then they had put it up as a remnant, just over 2 meters, so I snapped it up and then didn't know what to do with it because I fully envisioned this being an 8577, because cotton lawn in my head, or these big print cotton lawns in my head, are 8577s. I love wearing them, I love making them, they work really well in a cotton lawn. So there are other shirt dresses that I've made as well, but always for me it's usually by 5 meters, and then I've got plenty of options of what dress I want to make with it. But just over 2 meters usually in my head means top. So this has been in my top section of my stash for a very long time. It stayed there because, as we have discovered, I very rarely wear separates, and I love this print so much that I was just like, I don't know if I would wear it if I made it into a shirt. Then earlier this year I discovered that I could get the Butterick 5951 with these little cap sleeves out of a very narrow fabric that I only had 2 meters of, the lemon print dress, which I absolutely love. So I then went through my stash and picked out all of my shorter lengths of fabric that I had enough to make that dress out of, and there is a 5951 pile that's just going to get made over the course of the next year. This is wildly inappropriate for the time of year. It is a white bright cotton dress. It is completely inappropriate and won't get worn for a very, very long time until the weather starts warming up again in 2024. So I am not expecting to get much wear out of this at all. But I had cut it out a couple of months ago and it has been sitting in the sewing room for a while. So I thought, you know what? It doesn't take me very long. I'm going to get this sewn up, and I'm really glad that I did, because I would have hated for this to sit around just kind of maybe warping or stretching or losing pieces, because I don't have any more of this fabric and I can't replace it. And it did take about a day. I sewed up the skirt for the dress that I'm wearing and the skirt for this one, and the lining for this dress as well, because this is fully lined, because it is sheer and it does need it. So yeah, I sewed those 2 skirts up in an afternoon. In fact, I think it was an evening with the Zoom call Patreon Peeps. Then the bodice didn't take very long at all. So yeah, I'm really pleased that this one is done. I absolutely love it. And like I say, I have probably about 5 fabrics over there that were all bought because I love the print, but there wasn't enough of them to make my usual dresses, so I bought as much as I could and then didn't know what to do with them. Now I do. There will be more of these. I also really love these little cap sleeves. The original sleeves, the longer sleeves on this one, are really cute and I love those too. And if I have enough fabric of a viscose or something slightly floaty, I will 100% make those sleeves, because they do have a very big poof at the top and they do have gathering in them at the elbow as well. But for cotton lawns, I'm really happy with these little cap sleeves. I wouldn't want it sleeveless. I like the addition of the cap sleeve. I think it gives a nice kind of extra little bit of definition to my shoulders, which helps with the hourglass shaping, and it is a shape that I particularly like to enhance if I possibly can. Also, I'm going to do a close-up for you, but the matching of the centre back waist seam and over the zip and also at the neckline, mine are usually pretty good and usually maybe like, you know, a millimeter out, but these ones are absolutely perfect and I absolutely love when that happens. So yeah, really pleased with this dress. And then the final thing I have to show you from this month of sewing is my recreation of my Holston skirt. The very lovely Maggie sent me a vintage pattern with a cape and a skirt in it, and the skirt was what intrigued me because that thing was loopy, and I did do a whole video about trying to make it up and make it fit me earlier this year. I think it came out at the beginning of this year. It did not fit me very well, and altering that pattern was not as easy as I thought it was going to be, because it was already the right size at my waist, but it was about 6 inches too small for my hips, and I liked the final version, but it wasn't perfect. So I wanted to revisit it, especially as I had made my bodice and skirt sloper earlier this year. I decided to try and recreate the Holston skirt, but with some tweaks and changes that would make it more me. And I love how this thing has turned out. You cannot see the interesting seam lines in this skirt. The first one that I made, I did in a corduroy, which obviously has a nap. The grain line and then the crazy seaming on that skirt stood out more in the corduroy fabric because of the nap. But for this one, I don't think you can really see that it's got some really interesting wraparound pieces on it. So I'm going to make another one. I have some stripe fabric in my stash that I'm considering. I think that could look really cool. I also think this would be a really cool skirt to add on to some of my favourite bodices. So I probably will try making this as a dress next year. I also added a centre back seam because the original skirt had the fullness or the seams as center front and center back seam, but that meant the fullness came from like your crotch and your butt, and it just looked a bit odd. So when I turned it so that they were side seams, I loved how it looked. Because I then had the zip at the side seam, that's fine for the original, but it meant for this one I could add in a center back zip, which then meant that I could flat fell, because it's denim. I was going to French seam, but it's slightly too thick for that, so I flat felled the seam allowance on this skirt, which has meant that the clipping into crazy corners that I didn't like on my first iteration, because I'd bias bound most of it, this time I've been able to flat fell them and enclose all of the rawness. So there is only one raw seam on the inside of this, because I didn't account for how the seam allowances get turned back on the new style line, or you know, functional seam that I put in. So I've got a little tweak to make to the pattern, but once that's done, this skirt is going to get made again, and I love it. And I love this version. I have got enough fabric left to make my waistcoat, but I didn't manage to get to that this month. I am going to be attempting it at some point soon, possibly in December if I have any time spare, but I do quite like sleep, so I think probably it'll end up getting done in January, and I will show you the full process for that as well. The full video for the Holston skirt will be coming out very, very soon, and I struggled initially with putting the pattern together, but I think I got there in the end, and I'm so happy with the result. And as I say, I will 100% use this pattern again, and I can imagine putting it on 2 bodices as well for an interesting dress. So yeah, I'm classing this as a success, and I love how it's turned out. That is the final piece that I have to show you for November's sewing. I have done some other projects as well, but as I say, they're coming out in December, and I want to save them for that video, so you will be seeing them very, very soon, because it's December on Friday, 2 days time. How did that happen? I am very much looking forward to Vlogmas though, because that means a hot chocolate every morning for me. You also get to see the Fwiff and the QQ very, very soon as well. Every day for 24 days throughout December. As I said at the beginning of this video, I don't think any of those are a flop. I am super happy with how all of them have come out. I think they are all gorgeous, and they are all things that will get worn in my wardrobe, although maybe not till the weather warms up a little bit for that one, and until I have somewhere fancy to go for that one, but they are definitely things that will get worn. Which one is your favourite? I'm not sure I can play favourites, because as I say, I like them all for very different reasons, but I think they've all been very successful, so I'd be really interested to hear which one you think looks the best and why. If you've enjoyed this video, you might want to check out this one here.